Hey, this is Eran Stern for CreativeCow.net with the second part of the tornado text animation. In this part we will create some nice displacement for the floor and also use the wonderful After Effects CS3 per character text engine to create some radioactive green fireflies around our dancer. Just to remind you, this is what we came up on the first part, and as you can see, the text is coming under our dancer from the floor towards up, and we want to make the floor to react to the text, meaning it will just generate some nice bubbling or displacement effect. After that, we will color our scene with some nice fireflies as promised. But first, let me show you how easy it is to create the floor displacement I'm talking so much about. The first step will be to create a new composition for our displacement source. So go under composition, choose to create a new composition. Let's call this displacement source. And we will choose 1500 pixels for the width and 1500 pixels for the height using the square pixels aspect ratio, and the duration should be the same as our main comp, which means 5 seconds. Let's choose OK. Here in this comp, let's create a new layer by right-clicking and choosing New Solid, and make sure it's comp size, and you can choose OK. And while this layer is still selected, go under Effect, Simulation, and choose the Wave World effect. Now let's change the view from wireframe to height map, and open the simulation and change the grid resolution from 40 to 150. Generating a quick run preview shows us that this is exactly what we're looking for, a bubble inside our screen that we will use in order to displace the floor. But remember that we also have our dancer here in the middle of the screen. So if we don't want any displacement, we need to create a neutral gray in the middle of the screen. So for that, let's create another solid layer, and let's choose the elliptical tool, ellipse mask, double click it, and double click one of the anchor point. Now using Ctrl and Shift, I will scale this down to somewhere around here. This should cover enough of what we have in our scene, which means here the dancer will stand. And also let's open the mask and change the feather properties, so between our neutral gray and our displacement effect will be a nice transition. And basically we are done here, so we can close everything and come back to our tornado text effect. And let's also make sure that we see the project pan. And what we want to do now is, in the timeline, make sure to select the floor layer and just duplicate it using Ctrl or Command D. Make sure you still select the first copy, and in the project panel make sure the displacement source is selected. And now we will use a nice keyboard shortcut in order to replace this displacement source with our floor. So hold down Ctrl plus Alt, or in Mac Command plus Option, and the /, and this should replace our first copy of the floor with our displacement source. For the moment, let's turn off the eye for it, select the layer of the floor, and we know that the displacement source is just on top of it. And now go to Effect, Distort, and choose the displacement map effect. So now we have to define which layer we want to displace it with, and we will choose, of course, our displacement source. And let's stand here somewhere around maybe 2 seconds, so we will be able to see the displacement on the floor. Now let's change the maximum horizontal displace for something around maybe 25, and you can also change the maximum vertical displace to a value of maybe 30. And we can start to see that the floor is displacing, but it's a little bit hard to see because we don't have any shadows on the floor. So if we want to make sure that we will see the shadow, let's activate our displacement source once again. So now we will be able to see it on top of our floor. Now you can see how beautiful it looks. Just make sure to select the displacement source, toggle between the switch and the mode, and just change the displacement source blending mode from normal to overlay. It will overlay the pixels on the floor, and now we can see we got a very nice distorted floor exactly where the text meets our denser. And of course the floor underneath the denser is not displaced because we use a neutral gray for it. So what I want to do now is just look for the place where the text is completely out of the screen. I will guess around 3 seconds in my timeline. And now where the text left the floor, we should stop the displacement for the floor as well. So we will do it in the most easy fashion by using an opacity keyframe. So while the displacement source is still active, just hit T in your keyboard and record the keyframe in opacity in this frame. And let's move on to maybe 4 seconds and just reduce the opacity to 0. So the displacement of the floor will not be visible at the couple of the last seconds of our animation. So this is what we have until now. Let's go to the first frame and just create ourselves a quick run preview just in order to check that everything is working as expected. Well, I think it's looking beautiful, and I really love this effect on the floor and the text all over Yuval, our denser. But I want to take it even further and use the After Effects text engine to create some nice radioactive fireflies. So let me just stop the run preview and let's get down to it. Okay, so in order to do it, we can close the displacement source. And let's select the text tool, and in the middle of the screen I will use the Arial font. And what I like you to do now is just make sure we will see only this text. So let's solo the layer, and if you're working on a Windows, then what you need to do is hold down Alt and then on the numlock press 0149. This will create a tiny circle for the ASCII code of the Arial font. If you're working on the Mac, you can use Alt plus the number 8 in your keyboard, in your main keyboard. Now you can select the character and just copy and paste it a few times so you have a rows of dots. And then you can of course copy all of those dots and just paste them a few times more. Now let's just move this text into the middle of our screen, and what we need to do now is select all of our text and just change the size from 63 to, I say, 10 pixels, and then while it's still selected, just copy and paste it a few times so you have a row of dots on the screen. And with this row of dots we will work. So first let me just double click this text and change the color from white to some kind of light green. So this will be the color of our fireflies. And now just open the text properties, and under animate, let's enable the per character 3D animation. Now we will add a position animator, and to this animator also add a wiggly selector. Now under the values for position, let's change all of them from 0 to 500 in the X, 500 in the Y, and 500 in the Z. If you just press on the 0 in order to see a quick run preview, then you will see that After Effects basically took these little dots that we have and just wiggled them on the screen. But this wiggle is great, but it's just a little bit too fast for my taste. So open the wiggly selector, and under wiggles per second, let's change it from 2 to 0.2. And under the correlation, which is how much these dots relate to each other, let's change it from 50% to 20%. Now if we will generate another run preview, we will see that we made it look a little bit more easy. So the wiggle is not so fast as before, and the correlation is also less, so they are flying around each one to a different location. And for me this looks very much like fireflies with a radioactive or something like this because of the green color. Okay, so now let's introduce this layer into the whole scene. So let's collapse this triangle and unsolo the layer. And now of course we will see every component of what we have here. And let's change the blend mode for this little tiny green circle from normal to an add mode. And if you want, you can also add a glow effect to them so they will shine even better. But I think this really sells the effect. It's really good. And also let's just make sure that motion blur for this layer is also enabled. So while they are flying around, they will be also smeared thanks to the motion blur effect. And you can of course check it in a couple of other places. Let's say that we will go to the end frame just to see how these fireflies will add to our scene. And I think it's a little thing, but it adds a lot of, realistic, because it's not so clean as before. Now you can go to the first frame, and that's it, my friend. We are ready to our final RAM preview. So make sure you are hovering on top of the composition window. Use the tilde key to get into full screen mode. Let's make sure that we see it on the maximum scale available for us. And let's create our final RAM preview. I think that I will summarize this lesson by saying the text engine in After Effects CS3 rocks. Oh yeah, it does. You can see for yourself the tornado text ribbon effect and the fireflies, all thanks to it. I hope you find this lesson useful, so now you can also make text and fireflies to circle your body while you're dancing. Until next time we'll meet, this is Eran's turn for CreativeCow.net saying goodbye.